The 2026 Formula One reset. Formula One's biggest reset in decades is coming in 2026. Cars will be shorter, lighter, more nimble, with active aerodynamics and nearly half their power coming from electric motors. In other words, the whole chessboard is being flipped. Like, flipped. And when the lights go out, some teams will soar, while others could be left in the gravel. So let's break it down, team by team. The 2026 Formula One reset. Who's hot, who's not, and who might shock the world? The reset explained. So what's actually changing in 2026? In short, Formula One cars are about to feel, sound, and race differently than anything fans have ever seen. They'll lose about 30% of their downforce, that invisible push that glues them to the track in corners, and about 55% of their drag, which is the air resistance that slows them down on straights. Put simply, less grip when turning, but way higher top speeds. And that's by design. The FIA wants cars that race closer, look sleeker, and rely less on turbulent air. In 2026, slipstreaming will be back in style. Think 1980s turbo drama, with 2030s tech. To balance it all, Formula One is introducing active aerodynamics. Picture a car whose wings literally change shape, depending on the moment. In Z mode, the wings tilt up for maximum grip in corners. Flick it to X mode, and they flatten out for raw, straight-line speed. It's the closest thing to a legal Mario Kart Turbo button. Drivers will have to think more too. Managing energy deployment, region braking, and aero settings on the fly. Every straight, every braking zone becomes a strategy call. Then there's the power unit. Each car will get a 350 kilowatt electric motor, supplying almost half the total power. That's like dropping the guts of a Tesla Plaid into a 200-mile-an-hour rocket. Combine that with a combustion engine, all running on 100% sustainable fuel, and you've got the most radical power shift since 2014. 6 manufacturers are confirmed: Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda, Audi, Ford with Red Bull, and Cadillac with Andretti. Some already smell blood. McLaren, the heavy favourites. McLaren are the benchmark. In 2025, they've dominated, 11 wins from 14 races, with Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris battling each other for glory. It's wild to think that just 2 years earlier, they were fighting to escape the midfield. Andrea Stella's leadership, the new wind tunnel, and an overhauled factory turned Woking into a winning machine. But McLaren still run Mercedes custom engines. They buy, not build. Works teams like Ferrari or Mercedes usually have the edge because they design car and engine as one system. If Mercedes deliver a rocket hybrid, McLaren ride the wave. If not, they risk being dragged right back into the pack. And let's not forget Norris versus Piastri. They've already collided in Canada. 2 hungry young lions, 1 championship car. Expect fireworks. Because make no mistake, the only thing faster than a McLaren right now might be their own internal rivalry. Mercedes, the reset kings post-Hamilton, George Russell leads the charge, joined by teenage prodigy Kimi Antonelli. They've already scored double podiums in Montreal and look steadier after years of bouncing through porpoising hell. And if there's one thing Mercedes do best, it's a reset. In 2014, they owned the turbo hybrid era, and now they're back to building their own power unit at Brixworth, rumoured to have a revolutionary, lightweight MGU-K system for faster energy recovery. Add Russell's prime and Antonelli's raw pace, and Mercedes are one clever chassis away from toppling McLaren. Russell's calm consistency, Antonelli's fearless youth. It's Hamilton-Rosberg 2.0 waiting to explode. Ferrari, glory, or heartbreak. Ferrari shocked the world by signing Lewis Hamilton. But 2025 has been rough. No wins, reliability meltdowns, and Charles Leclerc generally outpacing Lewis. Their one highlight? Hamilton winning the Shanghai Sprint before being disqualified. Ouch! The good news, Ferrari are all in for 2026. Their new power unit is, already dyno tested, and they'll also supply Cadillac. Fred Vasseur's leadership has brought structure to Maranello, but Ferrari's challenge isn't just technical, it's cultural. Strategy calls, reliability, pressure from home. They've got the most glamorous lineup in years. Hamilton and Leclerc, 2 alphas, 1 dream. If Ferrari finally get it right, they could set Italy on fire. If not, 2026 could be heartbreak in high definition. Red Bull, dynasty in turmoil. Just 2 years ago, Red Bull were untouchable. Now, 4th in the standings, Max Verstappen still wins through pure brilliance. Japan, Imola, but the empire is wobbling. Horner's gone. Adrian Newey defected to Aston Martin. Their wind tunnel is outdated, and 2026 brings a brand new Ford power unit, already rumoured to be behind schedule. This is the project Red Bull Powertrains was built for. If it fails, they're stuck. No fallback, no custom engine, no excuses. Even Verstappen's future isn't ironclad. He's contracted until 2028. But those performance clauses, let's just say, if things go south, he might not stick around. Could 2026 be the first season since 2020 that Red Bull don't win a race? Buckle up. Aston Martin, the ultimate gamble. This is the fairy tale candidate. Aston Martin poached Adrian Newey, the architect of modern F1 dominance, and engine guru Andy Cowell from Mercedes. Add a full works Honda deal with in-house gearbox and suspension, and you've got one of the most ambitious rebuilds on the grid. Fernando Alonso's still razor sharp, chasing that one last title shot. But Aston basically wrote off 2025 to bet everything on 2026. If Newey nails active aero, Aston could pull a Brawn GP 2009, midfield to champions overnight. But if the concept flops, there'll be just another green blur in the mirrors. It's all in, no plan B. Alpine, lost at sea. 2025 has been brutal. Last in the standings, 20 points total. Gasly dragging them along while rookies Doohan and Colapinto struggle. Flavio Briatore's back in the mix. Leadership chaos continues, and Renault's pulling out of the engine game. From 2026, Alpine become a Mercedes customer, which could help focus on chassis and aero. But history says resets aren't their thing. Fans remember Alonso's glory days. Now it's just heartbreak. Unless leadership stabilises, Alpine could fade further into the fog. Audi kick Sauber. The rising story. From 10th in 2024 to podiums in 2025, Kick Sauber's revival is real. Nico Hülkenberg finally scored a Silverstone podium after 239 starts, joined by rookie Gabriel Bortoleto. 2026 is their real launch. Audi arrives with its own engine, ex-Red Bull exec Jonathan Wheatley running the show, and major investment flowing into Hinwil. Audi have the discipline, budget, and heritage. Remember, this is the brand that dominated Le Mans and Rally. If their first F1 engine hits, Audi could be the dark horse that sneaks into the top 5. Or higher, Williams. Rising from the ashes. Williams are the comeback story nobody saw coming. James Vowles has rebuilt the team from the ground up. Culture, staffing, and belief. Alex Albon drives like a man possessed. Carlos Sainz joined for stability. By mid-2025, they've nearly matched 7 seasons worth of points. With Mercedes' power and tight budgets, they won't win titles. But they could return to the podium, something fans have waited a decade to see. They've got hunger, humility, and data smarts. The ingredients of every great F1 revival. And for the first time since Mansell, Hill, and Villeneuve, Grove believes again. Haas and Racing Bulls, chaos and consistency. New lineup for Haas, Esteban Ocon and rookie Ollie Behrman. Solid, not spectacular. Haas stay loyal to Ferrari engines. If Maranello build a monster, Haas could grab scraps of glory. If not, they'll stay mid-pack fighters. Racing Bulls, still Red Bull's chaotic little brother. Driver swaps, DNFs, flashes of magic. Like Monaco, where Lawson's defence gifted Hadjar points. They'll share Red Bull's Ford engine in 2026, meaning their fate depends entirely on Big Brother Milton Keynes. Still a testing ground, not a title threat. Cadillac/Andretti, the American dream. Finally, the newcomers. Andretti Cadillac join in 2026 with Ferrari engines, a global base spanning Indiana, Charlotte and Silverstone, and experienced drivers Bottas and Perez. It's the first true American works team in decades, but getting here was a war. The FIA approved them. Formula One management resisted. Now all eyes are watching to see if they can actually survive. Starting fresh in F1 is brutal. Just ask Haas. But Cadillac's manufacturer muscle and Andretti's racing pedigree give them a fighting chance. For US fans, it's hope on four wheels. Because for the first time since the 1980s, the stars and stripes might be more than just a sponsor decal. The winners, losers and wildcards. So who's best placed for 2026? McLaren are the clear favourites, with Mercedes lurking ready to strike. Ferrari are the ultimate wildcards, either glorious or catastrophic. Red Bull looks shaky, their dynasty under pressure. Aston Martin are the gamblers, one genius design away from rewriting history. And in the shadows, Audi and Williams wait, ready to pounce when chaos hits. 2026 isn't just another season, it's a full reset, a chance for the brave to rise and the mighty to fall. Because in Formula One, change doesn't just rewrite the rulebook, it rewrites legends. New rules changing the sport. Formula One is about to hit the reset button, not just a little tweak here or there. We're talking a full-on rebuild. Smaller cars, smarter wings, way more electric power. Basically, the 2026 grid is shaping up to look like F1 went on a diet, took an engineering course and joined an environmental club, all at the same time. But here's the real story. This isn't just change for the sake of change, it's change for the sake of better racing. And we're about to make sense of all of it. No jargon, no rulebook lingo, just straight talk. So, why are they doing this? Because Formula One loves chaos. Productive chaos. Every few years the FIA and F1 decide it's time to shake the snow globe, mix up who's fast, and drag the tech forward. Right now the cars are blisteringly quick, but also massive, heavy, and sometimes too hard to follow closely. You've seen it. One driver gets stuck behind another and can't pass, even with DRS wide open. 2026 aims to fix that. The idea? Cars that are more agile, engines that are greener, and racing that's less about who has the best wind tunnel and more about who's got the guts and brains behind the wheel. Think of it as Formula One saying, let's bring back the dogfight. The cars are shrinking. Finally, over the years, F1 cars have ballooned. What used to be dart-like machines are now land yachts with wings. In 2026, that changes. The new cars are getting narrower and shorter. In real terms, they're trimming about the width of your laptop off each side and dropping roughly 30 kilos in weight. That might not sound like much, but on track, that's the difference between gliding through a chicane and bullying your way through it. A lighter car reacts faster, corners more sharply, and follows another car more easily without losing grip. Translation? Closer battles, fewer processions, and more chances for drivers to actually fight. Or, to put it simply, the cars will finally look fast and feel fast again. Okay, this is the big headline. F1's famous DRS, that flap drivers open to pass, is basically being retired. In its place comes something wild, active aerodynamics. That means the front and rear wings will both move, changing the car's shape on the fly. They'll have two main modes, one for corners, where the wings create loads of downforce to glue the car to the track, one for straights, where the wings flatten out to slice through the air like a fighter jet. Think of it like the car's wings have two personalities. Sticky for corners, slippery for speed. Drivers will switch between these modes mid-lap, every lap. It's a bit like giving them a real-life boost button from a video game, except instead of sparks flying, the car literally changes how it cuts through the air. And the goal? Keep the racing tight without needing that old DRS highway effect. Now let's talk power, because this is where things get spicy. The new hybrid engines aren't just engines anymore. They're half rocket, half laptop. The petrol engine still stays, but the electric part, the hybrid motor, is going through a serious glow-up. Right now, that electric motor adds about 160 horsepower, and in 2026, it'll be more than double that. We're talking up to 470 horsepower of electric assist. That's enough to power a small family car all on its own. It means when a driver floors it out of a corner, they're unleashing a wave of instant torque, a silent punch that launches them forward like being shot out of a slingshot. And here's the kicker, they'll be running on fully sustainable fuel. So while the cars still scream like F1 cars should, what's burning inside is 100% synthetic, cleaner, renewable, and future-proof. So yes, your favourite sport is going green, but it's doing it loudly. Let's talk about how overtaking will actually work now. Here's where things get interesting. With DRS gone, passing isn't just about opening a flap and zooming by, it's about energy strategy. Drivers will get something called a manual override mode, basically an electric push-to-pass button. If they're close enough to the car ahead, they can unleash a burst of electric power that gives them extra top-end speed for a few seconds. Meanwhile, the car in front loses a little of that electric boost at higher speeds. So instead of watching two cars drag race in a straight line, we'll get a proper cat-and-mouse chase. The pursuer has to time their boost perfectly, and the defender has to fight back smart. It's like DRS, but with more tension. Less open flap, overtake done. More, when do I hit the button? Now or 3 corners later? You'll still see passes, they'll just mean more. And now the handling. Think more human, less robot. You might not realise this watching on TV, but today's F1 cars drive more like slot cars than race cars. They're so glued to the ground by aerodynamics that the driver can't really slide or improvise. 2026 aims to loosen that up, and slightly. By reducing downforce and making the aero surfaces simpler, cars will move around a bit more. You'll actually see drivers fighting the car again. A little twitch mid-corner, a bit of oversteer on exit. It won't look sloppy, it'll look alive. The kind of driving that rewards instinct, not just perfect data. And fans who love onboard footage, you're about to get gold. Teams and manufacturers, a fresh start line. Every big rules reset in F1 is a chance for the order to shuffle. 2026 could be a major shake-up. The old guard, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. They've been dominating the hybrid era because they understood the tech best. But with the new, simpler engine rules and the push for sustainable fuel, new names are joining the fight. We're talking Audi, who's entering the sport for the first time, building their own power unit and jumping straight in with Sauber. It's F1's version of a transfer window. And that's exciting, because when new manufacturers show up, the established ones panic a little, and innovation happens fast. So 2026 isn't just about new cars, it's a new political era too. Let's be real, F1 doesn't always nail it on the first try. So the pros will get smaller, lighter cars, cleaner fuel, a hybrid system that actually matters for the race, and wings that make every lap feel alive. And the "we'll see" pass. Some drivers have already said early simulator versions of the cars felt slower. Others worry that losing too much downforce could make them a bit floaty in corners. But F1 has 2 years to fine-tune this, and the truth is no one knows exactly how it'll play out until they hit that first race weekend. Still, that's part of the thrill, right? And when the lights go out in 2026, nobody's starting from a sure thing. Now, let's talk about what you'll actually notice on TV. Here's what's going to jump out when you're watching that first 2026 race. The cars will look sleeker, narrower, a bit more compact with wings that subtly move mid-lap. You'll see on-screen graphics showing who has electric boost left, like a video game energy bar. And the overtakes, they'll feel more earned, less mechanical, more tactical. You'll probably also notice the sound. The engine note will still roar, but there'll be a faint electric whine underneath like a high-tech snarl. It's the future sneaking in. But the soul of F1 is still very much there. the bigger picture. These new rules aren't just about racing, they're about survival. F1 wants to stay relevant to the next generation, to car companies, and to governments that care about sustainability. So 2026 isn't just a new chapter, it's proof that the world's fastest sport can evolve without losing what makes it feel like Formula One, the noise, the danger, and the drama. Because let's be honest, no one fell in love with F1 because it was quiet or predictable. We fell in love with it because it's chaos, precision, and bravery, all fighting for the same tenth of a second. So yeah, 2026 will look different. The cars will be smaller, the wings will move, the batteries will punch harder, but underneath it all, it's still the same story. One driver, one machine, one chance to go faster than anyone else alive. And that's the beauty of it. F1 keeps changing its rules, but it never changes its heart. How teams are preparing for 2026. Picture the lights going out in 2026. Instead of the same story, we get a completely new chapter. Smaller cars, smarter engines, wings that move, and new teams joining the fight. Because 2026 isn't just another season. It's a total Formula One reset. And right now, deep inside factories and wind tunnels, every team is crafting a secret weapon. Today, we're decoding every team's hidden advantage. What's fact, what's speculation, and who might rule the next era. First, let's talk about the big reset. The FIA, Formula One's governing body, basically the sports rule makers, has dropped the biggest tech overhaul since hybrids arrived in 2014. Cars will be lighter, around 30 kilograms down, shorter, and narrower. The new design philosophy is called the nimble car concept. Think less bulldozer, more dart. The power units, 50% internal combustion, 50% electric. That's triple today's battery output, running on 100% sustainable fuel. And for the first time ever, active aerodynamics. Front and rear wings that change shape mid-lap, like DRS on steroids. Translation: every team has to relearn how to race. Old advantages vanish. Creativity plus execution equals survival. This new era won't crown the fastest car, it'll crown the smartest team. Now let's see who's built for reinvention. Oracle Red Bull Racing. The power of reinvention. What we know, Red Bull's biggest card is its Ford partnership. Yes, Ford is back. Together they're creating a works power unit from scratch. And their speculative secret weapon, full chassis engine integration. By designing both under one roof, Red Bull could start 2026 with fewer compromises and maximum synergy. The risk? New engines mean new reliability gremlins. If their battery deployment or software calibration fails early, their advantage disappears overnight. Mercedes-AMG Petronas. The simulation supercomputer. What we know. Mercedes is legendary for its simulation and wind tunnel precision, and their speculative secret weapon, their data integration, billions of digital test laps before a single real one. Think NASA mission control, but for race cars. The risk? They've been wrong before. 2022's porpoising was a simulation miss. If they misread 2026 aero behaviour, they could bounce their way back to midfield. Ferrari? The rebuild of Maranello. What we know, Ferrari's going through a factory-wide restructuring and PU modernisation, all happening under one roof in Maranello, giving them total control. And their speculative secret weapon? A clean sheet design philosophy. If they nail integration between engine, aero and reliability, Ferrari could finally turn potential into podiums. The risk? Ferrari's old nemesis. Inconsistency. A small strategic wobble could undo months of progress. Aston Martin, the ambitious underdog. What we know? Honda returns as Aston Martin's engine supplier in 2026. A proper works collaboration. And their speculative secret weapon, freedom to gamble. Without decades of baggage, Aston can take radical aero and energy deployment risks. The risk? Depth of experience. Big swings require big data, something they're still building. McLaren, the agility advantage. What we know, McLaren stays with Mercedes engines but has become the grid's adaptability king. They transformed their car mid-season in 2023. That feedback loop is lethal, and their speculative secret weapon: organisational agility. When others are locked in meetings, McLaren's already iterating. The risk: customer limitations. They'll always be a step behind the works team in engine development. Williams, the dark horse dream. What we know: Williams keeps Mercedes PUs for 2026 and is investing in simulation and aero facilities. And their speculative secret weapon: surprise factor. They can take design gambles others won't. The risk: budget plus time constraints. Smaller teams have smaller error margins. Alpine, the rebrand in progress. What we know: Alpine, formerly Renault, is expected to use Mercedes power units under the new supply map, and their speculative secret weapon: driver stability and new era flexibility. They can pivot away from Renault's legacy systems and chase 2026 performance. The risk: if their PU integration or chassis calibration lags, they'll lose ground quickly. Haas, the lean fighter. What we know: Haas runs a lean operation. They'll keep Ferrari-linked components. Their speculative secret weapon: efficiency. With fewer moving parts, they can focus resources where it counts most. The risk: limited R and D depth. The cost cap era helps them, but 2026 could stretch their technical bandwidth. Racing Bulls, the shadow project. What we know: Red Bull's sister team, formerly AlphaTauri, will share engine tech and potentially simulation tools. And their speculative secret weapon: access to Red Bull's data ecosystem. The ultimate cheat code if used well. The risk: they may stay a development arm rather than an independent contender. Audi, the German wildcard. What we know: Audi joins in 2026 by taking over Sauber and building its own power unit in-house. And their speculative secret weapon: a completely clean sheet design. Chassis and engine developed as one. Their car will be born for 2026, not retrofitted. The risk: no F1 track record. Reliability, race strategy, pit stop efficiency, all must be learned fast. Cadillac, the American wildcard. What we know: Cadillac, backed by General Motors, joins the grid as F1's 11th team. And their speculative secret weapon: massive American investment plus fresh engineering start. They're building everything for 2026, not adapting old parts. The risk: zero historical data. Every system, from wind tunnel calibration to race operations, is new. Here's the wild part: every team has a weapon, but the battle isn't about who has one. It's about who deploys it fastest. Active aero, hybrid deployment, sustainable fuel behaviour. New frontiers mean new failure points. A single misfired energy system or aero instability could turn a title favourite into backmarker overnight. Execution beats budget. Adaptation beats heritage. And in 2026, brains may finally beat brute force. So who wins the reset? If you force me to bet, Red Bull has the momentum, Mercedes has the method, Ferrari and Audi have the upside, and Cadillac brings the chaos. But remember, the true secret weapon isn't metal or code. It's people. The drivers, engineers, strategists, and dreamers who can make a rulebook sing. The drivers built for the new era. Throw out the rulebook, rip up the form book, because now that Formula One has shown us what the 2026 cars are going to look like, the conversation has shifted fast. We know this is the biggest regulation change in more than a decade. We know the cars will be smaller, lighter, and far more complex to drive. But here's the part that really matters. What kind of driver does this era actually reward? Is it the fastest driver, or the one who understands what the car is asking for? Because 75 years of innovation doesn't just change the machinery, it changes who survives. And in 2026, the job description behind the wheel looks very different. So let's get straight to the question everyone's asking. Which F1 drivers will thrive under the 2026 regulations? Based on what we know from the FIA's technical framework, Formula One's own explanations, and how drivers have historically handled major regulation resets, the drivers best positioned for 2026 aren't defined by aggression or raw speed alone. They're defined by how they process complexity while the car is moving underneath them. That immediately puts names like Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, and drivers with proven adaptability like Max Verstappen at the centre of the conversation, not as opinions or hot takes, as consequences of what the rules will actually reward. So what do these drivers have in common, and why does it matter now? At first glance, the 2026 car looks like a visual reset more than anything else. Shorter wheelbases, narrower bodies, lighter weight, simplified wings, flatter floors, and far less reliance on ground effect, all combine to change how these cars behave. Downforce drops, movement increases, and suddenly the car feels alive again instead of locked to the road. Same power, less grip, and that combination has always been a truth serum in Formula One. Whenever grip disappears, the car stops flattering the driver and starts exposing habits. And when the car stops hiding mistakes, who actually benefits? Slides don't vanish instantly anymore. Corrections cost time across multiple corners, and overdriving stops being forgiven by aero. You can't lean on confidence alone. You have to manage balance lap after lap. Drivers who rely on a perfectly planted platform suddenly have less margin to work with, while drivers comfortable negotiating with an imperfect car quietly gain one. That's why Lando Norris fits this era so naturally, because his strength has never been overpowering the car, but extracting performance without overwhelming it. It's also why George Russell's reputation for control in difficult machinery becomes more relevant than ever, because these cars reward precision, restraint, and timing rather than constant commitment. But grip is only half the story, and honestly, it might not even be the most important half. What if driving fast isn't the hardest part anymore? What if deciding when to be fast matters more? The defining change of 2026 is what the driver is responsible for while the car is in motion. Active aerodynamics mean the car behaves differently depending on where you are on the lap, with corner mode prioritizing grip and straight mode reducing drag. Energy deployment isn't automatic anymore. Boost, overtake, and recharge are all decisions, not defaults. Lap time becomes strategic, not just mechanical. This isn't about pushing harder or being braver on the brakes. It's about choosing better moments, better places, and better compromises. That's where drivers like Oscar Piastri quietly become fascinating, because his calmness under complexity and ability to absorb information quickly line up perfectly with a car that demands constant decision-making. In 2026, the fastest drivers won't look dramatic or chaotic from the outside. They'll look deliberate, almost boring, until you check the lap time. Now zoom out slightly, because overtaking itself changes character in this new era. Cleaner airflow, reduced outwash, and simplified aero mean following another car through corners should be easier than it's been in years. That's great for racing, but it also removes a layer of protection drivers have relied on. When you can follow closely, every weakness becomes visible faster. So do you attack now or set something up for later? Overtakes stop being about bravery and start being about inevitability. Drivers who thrive here aren't diving at half gaps. They're forcing the car ahead into bad choices, draining battery, and waiting for the math to work. This is racecraft in its purest form, and it's why drivers who look patient on TV are actually doing the most work. Norris, Piastri, and Russell don't need to win this corner. They're thinking about the next 5, and that mindset fits 2026 perfectly. Then there's adaptability, the hardest skill to quantify and maybe the most important of all. What happens when the fastest driver isn't the most adaptable one? Some drivers succeed in one regulation era and struggle in the next, while a rare few manage to survive multiple resets. That's why Max Verstappen remains firmly part of this conversation. Not because dominance magically carries over, but because adaptability does. He's already rewritten his driving style across completely different car philosophies, from high-rate designs to ground effect monsters. Drivers who've rebuilt their approach once don't panic, they recalibrate. And we can't talk about 2026 without addressing one of the biggest names in the sport. Lewis Hamilton enters this era with more experience across regulation changes than almost anyone on the grid, and that still matters. His strengths, tyre management, race reading, and feeling the rear of the car absolutely translate to a lower grip world. But 2026 also increases cognitive load, system management, and constant variability, which demands adjustment rather than muscle memory. The outcome isn't predetermined, But the challenge is real. That brings us to Charles Leclerc, whose skill set sits right on the fault line of this regulation change. Leclerc has always been highly sensitive to car behaviour, especially at the limit, and in a lower downforce world with more movement, that sensitivity becomes an asset. These cars will reward drivers who feel balance shifts early rather than react late, and that's something Leclerc has always done instinctively. If the car allows him to lean on feel rather than fight instability, his style aligns neatly with what 2026 demands. And that idea of feel over force doesn't stop there, because it shows up again in a very different way with Fernando Alonso, who somehow keeps finding himself relevant every time Formula One reinvents itself. What Alonso brings into 2026 isn't raw speed, it's clarity. He understands how to manage races when grip is limited, when patience matters more than lap time, and when losing a tenth now sets up something bigger later. In a regulation era built around timing, options, and energy management, that experience doesn't fade, it compounds. There's also a generational angle quietly shaping this grid. Drivers entering or settling into their prime around 2026 won't be unlearning ground effect habits. Active aero and energy management will simply be their baseline. Managing deployment modes won't feel like extra work, it'll feel normal. That doesn't guarantee success, but it accelerates adaptation. This is why younger drivers and rookies arriving around this era could surprise people, not with raw speed, but with how quickly everything clicks. Then there's a wildcard fans keep circling back to, and it's a fascinating one. Valtteri Bottas, in a 2026 context, suddenly makes more sense than it would have a few years ago. His strengths have always been clarity, smooth execution, and efficiency, rather than chaos or aggression. If the new cars truly offer a wider setup window and reward clean energy usage, that driving style becomes more valuable than it's been in years. It wouldn't be a fairy tale comeback, it would be a situationally logical one. Of course, not every profile benefits equally from this shift, and that's the uncomfortable truth of every regulation reset. Drivers who rely heavily on peak downforce confidence, ultra-aggressive corner entries, or instinct-first driving may find these cars more demanding. Less grip means fewer second chances. More systems mean more ways to be slightly wrong. Cleaner airflow means fewer excuses. That doesn't mean anyone suddenly becomes bad. It just means the margin they used to live in disappears. So when the 2026 season begins, expect something subtle but powerful to unfold. Expect fewer headline-grabbing mistakes, but more quiet separation across stints and race distances. Expect some drivers to look instantly comfortable, not because the car suits them perfectly, but because they're comfortable when it doesn't. Expect others to look fast yet inconsistent, searching for something that no longer exists, not because they're worse drivers, but because the sport moved. And that's the real story of 2026, beyond the wings, the batteries, or the lap times. Formula One is redefining what it asks from the person in the cockpit. This era will reward drivers who balance aggression with restraint, instinct with planning, and speed with understanding. And the drivers who treat a lap like a system rather than a series of corners, those will be the ones who thrive. So when you're watching next season, don't just follow the leaderboard. Watch who looks comfortable when the car isn't. Watch who's still managing energy deep into a stint, and who's already thinking a lap ahead instead of a corner ahead. So when the results start coming in, will we really be surprised? Formula One didn't just change the car, it changed the criteria. The hidden risks of the new regulations. Could Formula One cars run out of deployable power on the straight? Could overtaking become something drivers unlock, not earn? And could the sport actually become more dangerous in 2026? These aren't wild hypotheticals. They're questions quietly being asked across the paddock as Formula One prepares for the biggest regulation reset in its history. The FIA calls the new rules greener, smarter, and closer. But there's a growing fear they could turn racing into energy management and slowly push instinctive driving aside. Because if these rules miss, Formula One doesn't just evolve, its DNA changes forever. So let's talk about everything that could go wrong. On paper, 2026 looks like the kind of revolution Formula One loves to sell. Smaller and lighter cars, sustainable fuels with real-world relevance, a brand new power unit philosophy designed not just to go fast, but to look responsible doing it. This isn't a tweak or a fine adjustment. It's Formula One deliberately steering away from what it's been for decades. And history tells us something important about moments like this. Every time Formula One reinvents itself, it doesn't just change lap times or engineering priorities. It changes how racing feels to drivers and fans alike. Sometimes that feeling evolves beautifully. Sometimes it takes years to recover from. For most of Formula One's life, the equation was simple. If you wanted to go faster, you pushed harder. Right foot decides the outcome. Even when hybrid systems arrived in 2014, that truth mostly survived beneath the complexity. The combustion engine was still king. Electrical power helped. It filled gaps, boosted acceleration, saved fuel. But it never dictated the race. Drivers could attack, defend, and improvise, trusting that the car would respond when they committed. Electricity supported instinct. It didn't override it. That balance disappears in 2026. The new power units are built around a near 50-50 split between combustion and electrical power, with electrical deployment increasing dramatically compared to today. At the same time, the amount of energy drivers are allowed to use per lap becomes far more tightly controlled. That combination sounds efficient, logical, and forward-thinking until you realise how unforgiving it is. Because petrol doesn't suddenly decide you've had enough. The battery does. In the current era, drivers can lean on deployment aggressively and trust that heavy braking zones will recover some of that energy. There's elasticity in the system. You overspend a little here, you recover a little there, and the car forgives ambition. It lets drivers be brave without immediately punishing them. In 2026, energy becomes a hard budget. Spend it too early, and the system won't forgive you. Deployment drops away fast, and when that happens, a massive chunk of the car's performance disappears instantly. On a straight, that isn't just a disadvantage, that's exposure. This is where the mental side of racing begins to change. Drivers won't just be reading grip levels, brake feel, and tyre wear anymore. They'll be running constant internal calculations while fighting for position. Can I deploy here? Quietly turns into, if I deploy here, what happens to me later in the lap? That second question is the dangerous one, because hesitation is deadly in a sport built on commitment. Instinct gets punished when the system doesn't forgive you. Here's where things start to feel genuinely unnatural. In 2026, the fastest way through a corner might not be the fastest way through the lap. Drivers may deliberately short shift, over rev, or choose gears that feel completely wrong. Not because it gains lap time, but because it manipulates harvesting behaviour. They'll sacrifice corner exit speed just to recharge enough energy to survive the next straight. To fans, it may look cautious. To engineers, it's clever. To purists, it's unsettling. Formula One has always rewarded commitment. That moment when a driver trusts the car and sends it. In this new era, commitment without calculation could end your race. Now layer overtaking on top of all of that, and the tension multiplies. DRS, controversial, clumsy, but familiar, is gone. No rear wing flaps, no painted zones, no predictable slingshot passes everyone sees coming from half a lap away. And replacing DRS isn't just about batteries, it's also about active aerodynamics. In 2026, cars will automatically shift between low drag and high downforce modes depending on where they are on track, trimming drag on the straights and adding grip back in the corners. On paper, that sounds elegant, but it also means another layer of racing happens largely in the background, as the car automatically shifts between slippery and sticky, depending on where it is on track. When you combine that with energy deployment, overtaking risks feeling less like a duel and more like a system aligning itself at the right moment. Instead, Formula One introduces what the FIA currently calls manual override, a driver-controlled electrical boost that gives extra energy when you're close enough to the car ahead. No fixed zones, no obvious visual cues, just timing, judgment, and permission from the system. On the surface, that sounds like freedom. But freedom in Formula One is always conditional. Power needs approval now. For the first time, there is no universal detection gap. Instead of the classic within 1 second rule, the FIA is expected to set track-specific detection thresholds. Different circuits get different gaps based on how difficult overtaking is expected to be. The intention is noble. Help tracks that struggle. Don't interfere where racing already works. But intention and execution are rarely the same thing in Formula One, because now the FIA isn't just regulating cars. They're regulating overtaking difficulty itself. They're deciding how hard passing should be, how early drivers earn access to extra power, and how much assistance a chasing car deserves. That's an enormous amount of influence, and there is no perfect answer. Set the detection gap too generous, and overtakes risk becoming inevitable rather than earned. Set it too strict and nothing happens. Cars hover just outside the window, dirty air wins, and strategy collapses into patience. Tracks evolve, tyres change, weather intervenes, and what worked once may fail completely the next time. That means entire races could hinge on calibration over competition. Defending changes just as dramatically. In 2026, defending isn't only about positioning your car, it's about managing energy exposure. Deploy too much defending one straight, and you may be powerless on the next. Save too much, and you invite pressure that triggers your rival's override. Defense becomes predictive, almost political. You're not racing the car behind, you're racing the possibility of their power. And when a pass finally happens, the most uncomfortable question appears. Why did that overtake happen? Was it skill? Was it timing? Or did one driver simply run out of electricity? That question matters more than it sounds, because Formula One fans don't just want overtakes, they want to believe in them. They want to understand them, to feel the courage behind them. Once that belief cracks, it's very hard to rebuild. There's also a safety layer that doesn't get discussed loudly, but worries people quietly. Modern Formula One cars are astonishingly complex. Energy systems talk to braking systems, deployment curves talk to traction logic, and everything is interconnected. Picture high-commitment corners. Eau Rouge Copse 130R. Two cars flat out. One suddenly loses a chunk of electrical deployment mid-commitment. That speed delta appears instantly. Yes, there are ramp systems and fail-safes, but Formula One history reminds us the real world doesn't always respect simulations. Then there's the biggest philosophical question of all. What kind of driver does this era reward? In 2026, raw feel may no longer be enough. Drivers will need to understand harvesting behaviour, deployment windows, and energy curves at a level that borders on engineering. Those who master the system early could unlock performance others simply can't reach, not because they're braver, not because they're faster, but because they're better at working within the rules. System mastery wins races. Formula One has always balanced instinct and intellect, courage and calculation. In 2026, that balance tilts hard toward calculation, and that raises a question fans don't ask out loud often enough. Do we want Formula One to crown the fastest driver in the world, or the best system manager at 300 kilometers an hour? So where does that leave us? If the FIA gets this right, truly right, 2026 could unlock one of the most fascinating eras in Formula One history. Energy battles layered over wheel-to-wheel racing, late race swings driven by strategy, and drivers fighting rivals, physics, and their own machines at the same time. But if they get it wrong, even slightly, we risk a sport where the most important battles are invisible, where overtakes feel programmed, not earned, where fans leave races debating battery graphs instead of bravery, data over daring, and between batteries, algorithms, and active aero quietly adjusting themselves, drivers may end up racing the car as much as their rivals. Formula One has always lived. In 2026, that chaos might be managed. And if racing starts feeling managed instead of earned, will that ruin it all? We're about to find out. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and want more Formula One explained the easy way, hit subscribe. We'll keep making the fastest sport on Earth simple, clear, and fun.